The next thing that we want to discuss is the Code of Ethics itself, and we want to talk about the different sections of the Code of Ethics so that you can be more familiar and aware of how to go through the code and the important pieces of the code that you need to be aware of for your own practice. The first section of the NASW Code of Ethics is called the Preamble, and it discusses the mission and core values. Now, one of the areas that we really want you to be familiar with are the core values of social work, and so there are going to be several videos coming up about those different core values. The second section is the purpose of the NASW, and it provides kind of an overview of the main functions of the code. It also gives you a brief guide for dealing with ethical issues and dilemmas that may arise in social work practice. We, as a class, are going to be discussing ethical decision-making at length. We're also going to be going through a flow sheet and hierarchy of how that occurs so that you're able to work through ethical principles and dilemmas as they come up in your practice. So we're going to be discussing that in great detail this semester. The third section of the Code of Ethics is Ethical Principles, which presents broad ethical principles based on the core values that inform social work practice. This is kind of some of the information that we're going to be discussing in later videos about informed consent and different relationships that social workers have with both clients and colleagues, termination of services, lots of different areas that we engage with. The final section is ethical standards that includes specific ethical standards to guide social workers' conduct and to provide a basis for adjudication. We're not going to discuss this in too much detail, but it does apply to how social workers practice, and it is something that you want to make sure you familiarize yourself with. It's very important that you go through the code as a social worker and be able to understand and relate these different factors back to your practice. So one of our suggestions would be to go to the NASW's website. You can click there on the Code of Ethics to be able to look at and read through the code so that you're aware of the sections prior to coming to class. You're aware of some of the language that's used, and you're able to discuss the code. If you have questions, let us know about that, but we want you to be familiar with this code prior to your ethical examination.